He didn't smile. Didn't lift his eyes from the box long enough to even fake excitement. "You spend too much," he muttered, his tone flat as paper. My mother just said, "Hope you kept the receipt," and went back to scrolling through her phone. I stood there in their kitchen, Rolex box in one hand, silence surrounding me. That kind of moment? It leaves a mark. It wasn't just disappointment, it was exhaustion. I'd been performing for their love my whole life, and I suddenly realized there was no audience. No applause. Just indifference. I turned, walked out, and got into my BMW. As the car pulled away from the curb, the lights of the neighborhood blurred in my side mirror. I didn't know where I was driving, just that I needed to be somewhere, anywhere, else. 20 minutes later, I pulled into the parking lot of Ellie's Diner, my favorite place during college. A proper American-style greasy spoon. Red leather booths, linoleum floors with cracks you could trip over, and a jukebox that worked only when it felt like it. Ellie herself still ran the place back then. White apron, thick glasses, always remembering your name and your usual. My usual had been a coffee, fries, and a split slice of cherry pie when I could afford it. I stepped inside, the warm smell of bacon grease and burnt coffee hitting me like a nostalgic gut punch. The place was packed. All booths taken. I scanned the room until I spotted a man, maybe mid-50s, sitting alone near the window, slowly stirring a cup of coffee. His food had already gone cold. "Mind if I sit here?" I asked. He glanced up, studied me for a second, then nodded. "Bad day too," he said. "Your eyes are full of disappointment." I let out a breath. "Yeah, a little. I have 365 days like that a year," he said, chuckling without joy. We started talking quietly at first. He told me about his life, how his wife left him 10 years ago. His kids don't speak to him anymore. He once owned a business, a modest IT contracting firm that went under during the 2008 crash. Now, he fixes computers from his garage and walks his dog, Waffles, a shaggy little mutt who, in his words, hates everyone but me and garlic bread. I asked him why he came here so late at night. "It's warm," he said, "and the waitress lets me sit as long as I order coffee." He didn't complain, didn't beg, just talked. There was a strange comfort in it, like I wasn't alone in my bitterness. When the check came, I paid for both of us and slipped him a few folded bills under the plate. He frowned and shook his head, but I waved it off. "Use it for Waffles," I said. He cracked the smallest smile I'd seen all day. "She'll eat better than I do, that's for sure." I hadn't planned on going back. I told myself it had just been a one-time thing, some fluke moment of tired vulnerability. But the next night, my feet were back on the gas, steering toward Ellie's without conscious decision. There was comfort in the predictability, the warm, greasy smell of overfried food, the flickering neon, open 24 hours sign, and the dull hum of the same damn jukebox that always seemed to be playing Patsy Cline on repeat. Ray was there. Same seat. Same chipped coffee cup. But this time, he wasn't alone. Sprawled under the table, snoring like a busted radiator, was Waffles, a chaotic pile of mismatched fur and doggy determination. Her tail started flapping like a flag in a storm the second I sat down. She popped up, wobbled toward me, and immediately put her chin on my thigh like we'd known each other for years. "She's testing you," Ray said, sipping his coffee. "If she likes you, you're halfway to sainthood." "I don't know," I smirked. "Feels more like blackmail." Ray chuckled, rubbing a hand over his grizzled face. "Same thing in a dog's world." We talked again. This time, it wasn't just pain. He told me stories from his younger days, how he built his company out of a garage with 2 folding chairs and a laptop so old it ran hot enough to fry an egg. He'd made his first million before 40, bought a house, had 2 kids. And then, like some script you never want to read, it all fell apart. The crash, the layoffs, the divorce, the silence from his kids that stretched for years. "I don't blame them," he said. "But I stopped chasing ghosts a while ago." I told him about my parents, about scraping through college while they watched from a distance, arms folded, about the Rolexes, about the thankless silence. He looked at me, no pity in his eyes, just recognition. "You keep waiting for people to become who they never were. That's how you waste a life." That sentence landed harder than I wanted it to. At some point, Waffles farted audibly and rolled onto her back like she was proud of it. I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my soda. "Is she always this elegant?" I asked. "She's a lady of high standards and low hygiene," Ray said with a wink. When the check came, I tried to pay again, but Ray put up a hand. "Tonight's on me," he said. "Gotta protect your ego. Can't have you thinking you're the only generous one at the table." As I got up to leave, Waffles followed me halfway to the door, her little nails tapping the linoleum. I knelt down and scratched behind her ear. Take care of him, all right? She sneezed on my jacket. Consider it a promise, Ray called out, raising his mug. Driving home, I didn't feel empty this time. The house still echoed when I stepped inside. My phone was still dry. No calls from family. No fake apologies. But something inside me had shifted. Not much. Just a hairline crack in the loneliness. Enough to let some air in. Maybe I hadn't found a father, but I'd found someone real. And maybe that was enough for now. Ray didn't ask for my number. We didn't schedule anything. But somehow, we both knew we'd see each other again. And we did. 3 nights later. Same booth, same waitress, same Waffles who greeted me like I was a lost relative. She launched herself against my shin and let out a wheezing bark that sounded like a balloon giving up on life. I scratched her head while she chewed aggressively on the hem of my jeans. I hope you didn't like those pants, Ray said, sipping his coffee. She's got a thing for synthetic fibers. I slid into the booth. She's got a thing for chaos. He grinned. Takes after me. This time, I brought something with me, 2 takeout bags from a Korean place across town. Ray's eyes widened like I'd pulled a magic trick. Bulgogi? He asked, poking into the foil trays. Are you trying to marry me? Just figured you deserved something other than scorched hash browns and gas station gum. We ate like we hadn't eaten in weeks. Waffles sat beneath the table, alternating between attempting to look dignified and sneezing directly onto my shoelaces. Ray spoke less this time, but it didn't feel distant. Just quieter. I filled the silence with a story I hadn't told anyone in years, how in high school, I worked the night shift at a 24-hour grocery store and used to sleep in the library during lunch because I couldn't afford food. And they never offered help? Ray asked, not judging, just confirming. They said it would build character. I think they were more interested in not spending money than building anything. Ray nodded slowly. Some people raise kids like they're running a boot camp, not a home. I wasn't used to anyone validating my experiences. Usually, when I told people bits of my past, they'd say something generic like, well, at least it made you strong. But Ray didn't say that. He just looked at me with quiet understanding, as if he knew that strength wasn't the point. That what I wanted back then wasn't discipline, it was love. He leaned back and let out a long sigh. You know, he said, I spent a lot of years trying to prove something to people who never deserved the proof. Wasted a whole decade trying to win back the ones who walked away. That hit hard. I think I'm still doing that, I said. Ray's eyes softened. Then stop. Because you're already worth more than their silence. The waitress came by, dropping the check with a smile. You boys should be paying rent here soon, she joked. We'll build a second booth out back, Ray said. When I got up to leave, Waffles followed again, tail thumping, tongue lolling. Ray called her back, but she hesitated, looking between us like she was asking a question I couldn't quite hear. Back in my car, I sat for a while before starting the engine. I didn't cry. I didn't feel angry. Just full. Like I'd eaten something I hadn't realized I'd been starving for. Not food. Not comfort. Belonging. 2 weeks passed like a slow song on repeat. I kept showing up to the diner. Ray kept being there. We stopped pretending it was coincidence. Some nights we talked. Some nights we didn't. But it didn't matter. The silence didn't carry weight anymore. It held space. It let us breathe. Ellie's had become something else entirely. Not a pit stop. A sanctuary. The jukebox still skipped like it had arthritis. The coffee still tasted like burnt rainwater, and the ceiling tiles still threatened to fall, but it felt like home in a way my real home never had. One night, it was pouring. I showed up late, soaked from a busted umbrella, my hoodie plastered to my back. I almost turned around, but there they were, Ray with a steaming mug, and Waffles curled in his jacket like a gremlin in hibernation. Tough night? He asked. I peeled off my hoodie and flopped into the seat. My mom called today. Ray raised his eyebrows slightly, like he already knew where this was going. She needed help, I continued. With a tax form, supposedly. But then it turned into this guilt-laced monologue about how I've grown so distant and how I don't come around anymore. She miss you? Ray asked. No. She misses control. Ray nodded once. They always do when you stop playing your part. I stared at the sugar dispenser. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just said I was busy and hung up. And now I feel like a villain in a story I didn't write. Ray let that sit for a moment. Then, quietly, you're not the villain. You're the escape artist. Waffles snorted, then slid off the seat with a grunt and began attacking a rogue French fry on the floor like it owed her rent. I watched her wagging tail and muttered, she's got the right idea. She's my therapist, Ray said with a smile. She takes payment in crumbs and back scratches. We talked more about how we both learned to shrink ourselves to fit inside other people's expectations. About the weird grief of missing something you never actually had. Not love exactly, but what love should have felt like. Ray told me he used to watch his neighbors through the window on Thanksgiving. Not stalking, he clarified. Just observing. Their noise. The warmth. I wanted to know if it was real. Was it? He shrugged. Real enough to hurt. That line stuck with me long after the bill was paid. After Waffles tried to climb into my lap, left fur on my jacket, and sneezed twice directly into my cup of tea. After Ray handed me a book, Man's Search for Meaning, and said, it helped me remember why I stayed. Stayed where? In the world. We didn't hug. We never did. But as I left that night, I touched his shoulder briefly. It felt more honest than any hug I'd ever given my father. It was a Wednesday when I realized I hadn't thought about my parents in 3 full days. Not with bitterness. Not with longing. Just silence. It was new. Strange, like my brain had shifted its focus from a locked door to an open window. Ray and I met again that night. I brought sandwiches this time, grilled chicken, the kind with crusty bread and garlic aioli that dripped a little too much. He unwrapped his like it was a gift and muttered, fancy stuff. Are you trying to spoil me? Waffles, of course, tried to spoil herself. She stood on her hind legs and stared at us with her most pathetic expression. When that didn't work, she upped the ante, whimpering, spinning in circles, and eventually flopping to the floor like she'd been struck down by starvation itself. She took a full chicken nugget from a toddler earlier today, Ray said with a deadpan look. Don't fall for it. I gave her a piece of crust anyway. That night, we sat longer than usual. The diner was half empty, the lighting low, the world outside quiet under a light snowfall. Something in Ray's face had shifted. Not sad, exactly, just distant. I went by the shelter today, he said after a long silence. Was thinking of volunteering again. I raised an eyebrow. You used to? For a few years. Fixed some computers, walked dogs, helped with donation drives. Nothing big. What made you stop? He hesitated. Then, I stopped seeing the point. His voice wasn't bitter. It was honest. And it landed somewhere in my chest I hadn't let people touch. You ever think, I said slowly, that the point isn't the big things? It's just showing up. Ray looked at me, and for a brief second, he didn't look like the older, wiser one. He looked like someone who needed to believe that, too. Maybe, he said. You've been showing up. It was the first time he'd acknowledged it out loud. I smiled, but inside, something uncurled, a tension I hadn't realized I'd been holding. I thought of all the years I showed up for people who never asked me to, and how, somehow, this man, this stranger turned something more, had been showing up too. No speeches. No demands. Just presence. Waffles, now snoring under the table, let out a low groan and rolled onto her back with all 4 legs in the air. Her tiny tongue flopped sideways. She's evolved beyond dignity, I said. She's achieved enlightenment, Ray replied. When the waitress brought over 2 slices of pie on the house, we didn't even pretend to protest. We just ate. Quietly. Content. As I left the diner that night, snow settling in soft patches across my windshield, I didn't feel like I was walking away from something. I felt like I was carrying it with me. This new weight, not heavy like grief or regret, but grounding. Real. Maybe the family I always wanted was never going to come from my bloodline. Maybe I was building it, one piece at a time, in a broken-down booth with a man who listened and a dog who farted through her dreams. The next time I walked into Ellie's, Ray wasn't there. His booth was empty, napkin holder full, salt and pepper aligned, no trace of fur under the table. I stood there for a second too long, eyes on the space that had become a second home. For the first time in weeks, something in my chest tightened. I ordered coffee, took a seat at the counter instead. Told myself not to read into it. Maybe he had an errand. Maybe Waffles was at the vet. Maybe it didn't mean anything. But then came the second night. Same booth. Still empty. And the third. By the fourth, I caved. I drove around aimlessly for a while, then headed toward the only lead I had. A worn-down brick building near the outskirts of town. The animal shelter Ray had mentioned, the one he used to volunteer at. I had no idea if he'd be there, or if he even still had a connection, but it felt like the only place to try. I walked in and asked for him by name. Oh, Ray, the young woman at the front desk smiled. Yeah, he was here this morning. Fixed our Wi-Fi and made coffee that tastes like battery acid. Relief hit me like a warm wave. I laughed. That's him. She gave me a number. Said he might appreciate a call. I hesitated for a full hour before dialing. When he picked up, I heard Waffles bark in the background like she'd been waiting for this moment her whole life. "You missed your shift at the diner," I said. He laughed, but it sounded tired. "Been feeling off. Flu or something. Didn't want to pass it around?" I offered to drop something off, food, medicine, whatever. He didn't protest, which told me more than words could. That evening, I showed up at his place. It was modest, an older bungalow tucked behind an overgrown hedge, but it was clean, quiet, and warm. Ray opened the door in a hoodie and sweatpants, Waffles barreling past him like a small, unlicensed cannonball. "Hope you brought something edible," Ray said, stepping aside. "Chicken soup. Real, not canned," I said, holding up the bag. "And this," I added, pulling out a box of dog treats. Waffles instantly sat, tail thumping a Morse code of betrayal and hope. We didn't say much that night. I reheated the soup, we ate in his cramped kitchen, and Waffles kept trying to jump into my lap like I was a couch. At one point, Ray looked at me and said, "You know, I'm not good at this. At soup. At letting people do things for me." I shrugged. I wasn't either. But someone changed that. He met my eyes. Said nothing. Just nodded. After the dishes were rinsed and Waffles had passed out under the radiator, I got up to leave. Ray followed me to the door, and before I stepped out, he said, "You didn't have to come." "I know," I replied. "But that's kind of the point." And that was it. Driving home, I realized something I hadn't before. Healing doesn't come in big moments. It comes in showing up when you don't have to. In calling someone back. In bringing soup. In remembering a dog's favorite treat. In realizing that maybe, for the first time in your life, you're not just being cared for. You're doing the caring too. Ray was back at the diner a few nights later, looking a little thinner but smiling like nothing had changed. Waffles greeted me like I'd just returned from war, then immediately tried to mount my leg in front of a family of 4. "She missed you," Ray said, sipping his coffee. "Clearly," I muttered, prying her off. Things felt normal again, but not quite the old kind of normal. It was deeper now, steadier. Like whatever was fragile between us had finally cemented. That night, I told Ray something I'd been holding back for weeks. I haven't talked to my parents since that call. He didn't react, didn't judge. Just nodded. "I think." "I'm done trying," I said. Not out of anger. Just clarity. Ray stirred his drink. Letting go's not giving up. Sometimes it's choosing peace over punishment. I leaned back, watching Waffles chase her tail in a tight, determined circle. "She ever catch it?" "Once." Hit her face on the table leg. "Hasn't tried since." "Smart girl." "Not really. But she's persistent." It hit me then how much of my life had been like that. Not smart, not strategic. Just persistent. Chasing things I thought I needed. And maybe it was okay to stop. Halfway through our meal, the waitress came by with a folded note. "Guy in the corner booth told me to give this to you," she said to Ray. He unfolded it, read it silently, then passed it to me. It was a flyer. A small tech nonprofit in town was looking for part-time volunteers to teach basic coding to low-income teens. Underneath, scribbled in messy pen, was a note. "You always had more to give. Maybe this time, give it somewhere it counts." Ray didn't say it, but I knew who sent it. The shelter. The one where he used to fix routers and make coffee no one drank. "You thinking about it?" I asked. He shrugged. "I've been hiding in coffee shops for a while. Maybe it's time to do more than warm a booth." There was a pause. Then I heard my own voice say, "If you go, I'll go." He looked at me for a long moment, then smiled. "That a threat or a promise?" "Both," I said. We didn't shake hands. Didn't make a plan. But something was decided. Waffles chose that moment to jump onto the seat between us and burp into my side. "She seals all major agreements," Ray said, deadpan. That was the night it all changed, from shared pain to shared purpose. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were beginning to build something forward-facing. Not revenge. Not recovery. Just presence. And maybe, in some quiet way, redemption. The room smelled like coffee and whiteboard markers. Ray was adjusting his glasses. He always claimed they were for effect, while a group of teens stared at him like he was the wizard of Silicon Valley. It was our 3rd week volunteering at the community center. Twice a week, 2 hours a night, we taught the basics, HTML, CSS, how not to smash your keyboard during a debug spiral. The kids were sharp, curious, some shy, some bold, all hungry to make something of their own. Ray was in his element. He told stories, made them laugh, taught with patience I didn't know he had. When one kid asked how he got into coding, Ray said, because I liked fixing things that didn't work. Eventually, I realized I was one of them. They didn't laugh at that. They just listened. I handled the quieter students, walked them through syntax errors, helped one girl rebuild her first personal website after she accidentally deleted it with one bad tag. She was ready to give up. I told her, sometimes the best things you make come after you've broken something. She blinked at me, then smiled like it meant something more than code. Waffles, by the way, became the unofficial mascot. We tried leaving her at home once. Didn't work. Now she wore a vest with a fake badge that said Dog Administrator. She snored through half the class, woke up only to steal someone's sandwich or sneeze on the keyboard. The kids adored her. After one session, we sat on the steps outside the center. The air was warm, early spring. Ray passed me a coffee and said, "This is the first time I've looked forward to something in years." I nodded. "Me too." He sipped, then added, "I think you saved me." I looked at him. No, we just showed up. For each other. Waffles barked once, like she was agreeing or maybe just asking for another granola bar. "I used to think family was something that came with blood," I said. "Now I think it's whoever stays." Ray leaned back, I scanning the darkening sky. "Then we've got one hell of a family." We didn't talk much after that. We didn't need to. The next day, I got a call from my mother. I let it ring. I didn't feel guilt. I felt free. I showed up at the diner later that night, just to see the place again. It felt smaller somehow. Not because it had changed, because I had. It had been my safe haven, my first stop on the road to something better. But now, I wasn't surviving anymore. I was building. Ray walked in 10 minutes later with waffles under one arm and 2 milkshakes in the other. Felt like the night needed a bit of nostalgia, he said. We took our old booth, now scarred with memories and ketchup stains. "You think this is it?" I asked. "The good part." Ray smiled. "I think it's the beginning of it." Waffles sneezed dramatically. We both laughed. And just like that, the past didn't matter anymore. What mattered was who sat across from me, who'd stayed, who showed up. And the milkshake wasn't bad either.